Okay, well, welcome everyone, and today we'll be talking about Web3 games. So first, we'll just introduce ourselves briefly. I'm a lawyer, okay? I'm a partner at Nelson Mullins. Don't hold it against me. You still guys need us. Perhaps now more than ever, but we'll talk about this. So I work in the fintech space. My clients are video game developers, platforms issuing tokens, and so on, like different types of projects in the Web3 space. And I would like to ask my panelists to introduce yourselves, please.
Hi everyone, Kendre Rodriguez. I'm on the North American business development team for Polygon Labs. There's about 6 of us that are based in the US, and then we have teammates and counterparts in Europe, LATAM, APAC, etc. The best way that we like to describe the BD team is we're evangelizing Polygon's different protocols and helping various developers across different industries understand what their use case is, which solution within our different protocols make the most sense. So gaming obviously is a huge focus for our team. We work pretty closely with Mike as well. Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Mike Levine from Mystic Moose. I've been a game developer for longer than I care to admit, but started in the 90s working for George Lucas. I am from Boston, so I'd say that. I grew up in Newton. I went to California, learned a bunch of stuff, and then came back home to start my own companies. And we've worked with lots of major brands over the years and created our own games, and maybe we'll get into it, but I'm always sort of attracted to what the bleeding edge is and new technology. So before blockchain, we were heavily into augmented reality, mixed reality, and then usually every 5 or 6 years in gaming, there's new technology, and blockchain and Web3 really caught my attention. And so that's what our latest venture is about, and trying to navigate the Web3 gaming universe.
Well, thank you. So let's talk about, first the definition. What is a Web3 game? To do that, I actually want to first talk about what is a Web2 game, right? And here I'm thinking like a pre-2009 world, where gamers were using consoles, PlayStation, Xbox, right? Then 2009 comes, iPhone comes, right? And then we have a whole different game within the video game space. Can one of you describe what is a Web2 game is and what makes it a Web3 game?
Want me to handle that? Okay. I mean, I guess I would answer that by saying my opinion is really there isn't really a clear definition of what a Web3 game is at this point. We're so early. You're seeing massive experimentation in the space, everyone trying different things. I mean, if you had to give it any definition, it would be, I suppose, a game using some blockchain technology in some form. But our journey into this, and we raised money initially late December 21 from Animoca Brands and some other great funds. And when I got into this, I knew nothing about blockchain, and I'm still not an expert, but there was a massive amount to take in, and there was this whole legacy of these other games out there, and sort of, well, they're doing things completely different than really video games had done historically up to now. And it took us, 6 to 12 months to realize, well, what we knew was true was actually true. And that means games are about fun. And you have to make fun games. And that's the most important thing, really, that this space needs. No one's going to care about an unfun game assets, right? So if we want people to care about asset ownership and blockchain technology, we need fun games that people then care about that want to own those assets. So that's a short answer.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll add some more color on top of that. I think Mike and his team is very unique in the sense where when Web3 gaming started to become more popular, it was the examples of Axie Infinity, where it was mostly incentivizing players to play because of the financial benefits, etc. In the last, I would say, 18 months, our team and other chains and just protocols in general, the wave of talent from traditional gaming that's now entering the space, either by inventing new IP or kind of taking their like the IP that they never brought to market and kind of trying to fit that and retrofit it and think about what sort of use cases make sense on the blockchain side. So there's a lot of interesting games in our pipeline and other protocols that you're going to see, I would say, launch probably in the next 12 to 18 months as well. And we recently announced our partnership with Immutable, which I'll talk about too. But I would say the level and the quality of games that are being built now is very, very different than I would say the initial wave of Web3 gaming that everyone was talking about in the past.
Just statistically, there are 1,873 Web3 games right now. I'm just saying, and that number just that was end of December 2022. And it increased by 34% in less than a year before that. So it is on the rise. But to me, I just want to add, a Web3 game brings a new concept to games that wasn't there before, and it's ownership, okay? Web2 games, free to play, right, model, where you have in-app purchases. You need to spend cash, but what do you get? You get maybe currency, like in-game currency. You get something that you don't own. You're kind of renting it, right? Once you stop playing that game, it just stays there. It stays within the game. The game developer stops developing it. They go supporting the game. It's gone, right? You spend the money and that's it. With the Web3 games, I think you now have, through the NFTs and such, you have the ability to perhaps take the asset outside of the game, right? And actually truly own it. But we'll talk about NFTs just afterwards. First, I want to find out from Kendre what Polygon is doing right now, because I've heard you have some amazing initiatives going on. Can you tell us all about them?
Right now, I would say our team is seeing huge adoption, specifically in APAC. Very similar to kind of the wave of adoption that you saw when mobile games started to become more popular. At the time, a lot of, again, the traditional developers at that point in time didn't really see the value, or there's a lot of hesitancy about going to market with mobile games, etc. Asia and APAC were the early adopters during that time, and we're seeing that now as well. Korea Blockchain Week happened about 3 weeks ago, and I would say probably every single developer that's either thinking about entering Web3 or is experimenting with the technology are all very focused on how do we attract the South Korean market, how do we attract Japan, etc. So I think just to start out in terms of region and kind of a lot of the momentum we're seeing, APAC is definitely leading the way. In Europe, there's a lot of, I would say, Eastern developers as well that are starting to experiment. They have a really strong developing community there. And again, mapping out the IP with some of the big studios that are based in the Nordics and Sweden, there's a lot of development taking place there. In the US, obviously given the regulatory climate and kind of what's happening, I would say Mike, again, is in a very unique situation where there's a lot of interest from game developers that we're connecting with. In full transparency, there's the lack of clarity on the regulatory climate of how do we introduce NFTs, what does it mean when we have custodial or non-custodial wallets, how does it impact secondary market sales? Those are all things that game developers haven't really had to think about in the past. And so we're really working closely with some of these game developers to figure out, okay, ultimately, where does it make sense to implement NFTs in your strategy? Where does it make sense to actually leverage Polygon? One thing we kept hearing from those game developers that we've been working with is, hey, we know how to build great games, that's where we're going to focus. But can Polygon and your ecosystem of different partners help us solve for the wallet solution, the marketplace, and all of those pieces? So what we're really focusing on right now is building out those ecosystem relationships and channel partners like an Immutable, Magic Eden. OpenSea just recently hired a gaming vertical lead, and you're going to start to see a lot of our partnerships coming out about how do we work really closely with these platforms to better serve those game developers and take away that heavy lift of implementing some of those pieces that we were just talking about, like the wallet and the marketplace and those sort of things. Earlier this year at the Game Developer Conference in San Francisco, one of the largest, if not arguably the largest gaming conference in the world, we saw there was a huge uptick versus last year in terms of, again, these these gaming studios that know how to build this IP and are starting to experiment. And so we announced our partnership with Immutable there. And for those who aren't familiar, Immutable is essentially a modular stack that solves and takes away all the complexity of the blockchain layer and packages it into this software kit that actual game developers can just easily plug into their game, and they don't have to worry about all of the heavy lifting and the technical implementation and integration, or even going through like a long list of vendors that need to help them integrate all of these technical pieces into their actual game development. So to summarize, Immutable is a really important partner, and we're seeing that a lot of the game developers who need to obfuscate a lot of the complexity of blockchain are working really closely with them and some of our other ecosystem partners. Secondly, APAC and in general, Europe are definitely leading the way in terms of newer games that are coming out, given that there's a lot of regulatory clarity in those regions, but we're suspecting in North America it's going to continue to happen. And then thirdly, the last trend I would just point out is our team is working really closely with more of the traditional distributors and just platforms that I would say non-Web3 gamers are very familiar with. Think of like the Epic Store, Steam, Google Play, iOS, Apple in general, and just the Amazon teams, and trying to figure out how we can support their strategies and make sure that game developers are appropriately building for their policies and are building safe games and are fun games ultimately.
Thank you. And Mike,
Yes.
So I heard that you are now working with Amazon Prime Gaming program. What
Yes.
is that? Can you please tell us about your experience in the program?
Yeah, absolutely. And, really we have Polygon to thank. It's a good segue to what you were talking about and those kind of Web 2 partnerships. And yeah, I think, and this is, we have built our game using Polygon. They've been an amazing partner to us, and we're aligned with a lot of sort of philosophically about how we look at the space, and they're really all about bringing in traditional gamers into this space. So through that relationship, we were able to, and an introduction, be, I think, only the second game that Amazon Prime Gaming has worked with. It was amazing to work with them. And what it is they work with lots of Web 2 games now, if anyone's been to Prime Gaming, where gamers can come in and claim things once a month. Our program lasts for 6 months. And so the idea that gamers can actually come in now and claim on-chain items that, could be used in other games and have deeper value and ownership to them, that's, I think, really enticing and something that they wanted to experiment with. And for us, it's been massive to bring in new types of people into the space, and all those things you were talking about, really being new and on the bleeding edge of this space. Like, we kind of had to invent that all ourselves because those solutions weren't there. And I was, I think, smart enough in the beginning of this that I realized, look, we're not gonna build our own marketplace. And fast forward 2 years, there's probably 50 different marketplace white label solutions out there, all competing to try to get games to be on them. So you're seeing the pieces come together. But for the Prime deal specifically, we also formed a partnership with Horizon Blockchain, which creates the Sequence wallet, because we wanted something, and really Amazon demanded, that would be really seamless to those users. And so it's an EVM wallet. It was important for us for it to be non-custodial. And yeah, we took probably 8+ weeks evaluating, again, 24 wallet solutions on the market to come to that decision. And so there's a lot to navigate still in this space as a developer, sort of, and trying to understand what the best solutions are. One thing that we've always loved about Polygon compared to some of the other chains, and coming from a gaming background, right, we want our game to be everywhere. We want as many people to play it as possible. So we built, our back end is really a Web 2, Web 3 hybrid, where we can read what's in people's wallets and take a snapshot of that and bring it into our Web 2 back end, basically, and have those two things always communicating. And what that allows us to do is also work with other chains, which we hope to do in the future. And this is something Polygon supports, right? We didn't want to be siloed. We want blockchain. We want to bring people together in our one game and not have these different versions on different blockchains. That's just silly from a gaming standpoint. So lots of things like that. I think Polygon has been ahead of the curve, on understanding compared to a lot of these other chains, which like build on our chain and you can't be anywhere else. It's just not a good model for games.
Thank you. So now I have the following question. So so there are some games that you can access by playing on a laptop or a computer, right? And there are other games that also have a mobile device version, right? And I personally see challenges bringing like Web3 games into the mobile devices. Perhaps even just because the App Store, let's say, wants their 30%, and then what if like you make people buy the NFTs? I mean, like encourage them to buy NFTs. Do they then have to pay the 30% on the NFTs? How does it work? Like, How do you see the reconciliation of mobile devices and Web3 games?
I'll be short, and then you can. But I actually have the 180-degree opposite view of that. So, if you look at the gaming landscape, first of all, on the PC side, it's really dominated by Steam. They own like 85% of the market for downloadable games. Then you have consoles as well. Both of those, at least at this point, are completely, closed off to blockchain games. In fact, you're seeing some blockchain games go on to Steam just because the market's so big and remove everything of the blockchain from their game. By contrast, you have mobile, you have Apple and Google who've opened the doors. They've written it into their policy. So it is possible now. They've paved the way, honestly. That was a huge hurdle at the beginning that's now gone. The only hurdle left, really, and this is a big one, is education. And making gamers understand and care why they should even care about this. And it's really a big problem, honestly, because you ask the average gamer, they're happy, right? They don't care that Blizzard or Riot is holding their assets in a centralized database. They don't know what a decentralized database is, right? So, and this is like a part of the struggle of this space is like, and you're seeing big companies like Mythical with NFL rivals choose to use a custodial wallet, right? And we're like, well, isn't that the whole point of it? We want to be non-custodial. Otherwise, as my blockchain engineer tells you, then you are not blockchain, right? So there's this struggle to make the onboarding easier, right? But still sort of maintain that blockchain side to it. Anyways, I went off rails there. Go ahead.
No. It's all interesting, right? We're all learning. Now I have a question about, so it used to be free to play, right? And then you buy, like making up purchases. Great, we get that model. Now it's earn to play, right? That's the thing. I've also heard of like move to play and like all different variations. And then the NFTs come in somewhere. Where do the NFTs fit in within the Web3 games? What do they do? Why do you need them? What's the purpose of the NFTs? And hopefully it's not just to make money, right? There should be some other, like how do the NFTs fit in within the earn to play model? That's my question.
You want me to do this too? Okay.
I'll add some color.
Okay. I mean, with us, first of all, and I think you're going to ask me this in another question maybe, but like our NFTs, we've never said anything about value, okay? The only thing we've promised is fun, right? And this is an asset that's part of our gaming ecosystem that if they own it, the value is that as we make more games, they can use that asset in other games, right? And so to us, if you look at the history of gaming, and that's what appealed to me about this space in the first place, is that really gamers have just been renting their assets, right? They think they own them, but they don't. And this is where I get back to the education. And so this is, to us, the core of it, right? And this is what we've realized too, like all these deeper concepts in Web3, DeFi, staking, forget about that. If you can't convince people about ownership, like what blockchain 101, as I call it, we're never gonna get to the second or third steps. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely still games that are marketing as earn to play or play to earn or move to earn, and that I would put that in a completely separate bucket to the type of game that Mike and his team is building and the games that we're really prioritizing and focusing on. What's interesting is we've seen there's a lot of interest on kind of creating these communities, and how do you lean into Discord, and there's a lot of activity in Discord, and kind of as you think about marketing Gen Z and kind of how they interact with applications online, whether it's a game or other consumer apps, like there's all of these like subset of these different communities, and tapping in and getting those communities excited and feel like they're participating in either the game development early on, or as they are either leveling up, they have a community that they can talk to, and they're actually earning rewards for their participation. And so user-generated content is another area that we're seeing like a high increase in kind of use cases of NFTs and what does it mean to kind of interact with that technology. But at the end of the day, like the focus is fun game, make the onboarding super easy and simple. If you go to Planet Mojo's website, you have an Android device, you can play the beta, you can actually immediately hit play and actually get into the game environment. Like that experience didn't exist about 8 months ago when you were thinking about the types of Web3 games that were getting developed. You had to either, create an account in a centralized exchange, learn how to use a MetaMask wallet, bridge over to MetaMask, then go onto this different browser, and then try to figure out how to sign in, and then kind of like go through this pixelated gaming experience and stake these tokens and buy into these tokens. Like that UX experience is gone. Like, and that's not really an area that our team is focused on. There are going to be those games, and there are some games that are focusing on being fully on-chain. There is a theme of that, and like we are supporting those games as well, and those are really targeting like the Web3 gaming community, or just like Web3 developers in general. But that's a very, I would say, specific group that isn't really where we're focusing. We're really focusing on kind of like the broader use cases and making fun games and supporting those game developers there.
I mean, one thing that's crazy about this space in terms of, if you look at the history of games, in my opinion, is that throughout the history of video games, the last, 30, 40 years, whenever there's been like this big change or movement, like a mobile or console, and video games are just like any industry, right? There's like one or two big creative moments and everyone chases and copies it, right? And so like we just think back to the last few cycles, right? Like when mobile hit the scene, Angry Birds, and everyone copies it. And then free-to-play emerges, and a few games, Clash of Clans, and everyone copies it. What's different here is that happened, and everyone thought it was like Axie Infinity, and everyone got excited and started chasing this model, and then midstream we all realized this is not the model, right? We have to now figure out there's something here, and we still believe in the underlying principles, but all of the companies like us who are chasing this, and just like in the early days of free-to-play, if you look at those early days, it evolved over a few years, and then everyone kind of started figuring out, and patterns emerged, and that's really the phase we're in. Someone's going to figure it out, hopefully us. Someone's going to be the Zynga. Back in the days of Facebook games, right? Zynga would move a button in Farmville, and then a dozen companies would move the button to the same place. Like, oh, they must know something. Mm-hmm. So you're going to see that happen in this space.
Okay, and then one last question I have, and that's obviously at the top of my mind as a lawyer. So in the last, I would say 3 weeks, right, we saw 2 enforcement actions from the SEC on the topic that they have not touched before, and that's the NFTs. In both cases, the NFTs were deemed to be securities and were therefore sold illegally in unregistered offerings. So just a quick, one of the projects, Stoner Cats, they promised to build a web series of 6 episodes about cats, house cats that taste some of their owners' medical marijuana, and then you can imagine. And then they raised money. In 35 minutes, they sold $8.2 million worth of NFTs, and those NFTs were unique. They were based on the characters from the show. And they built a series, but there was a secondary market. And most of the NFTs were resold on the secondary market even before the second episode aired. Okay? So my question to you guys, do you see these enforcement actions? And there was no fraud, nothing, right? In both cases, they were just doing their best. do you see these enforcement actions having a chilling effect on the development of Web3 games in the United States?
You're gonna make me answer that? You sure you don't want to? I mean, yeah, my answer is, look, I'm a game developer and a CEO, I'm not a lawyer. We hire the best lawyers in the space and take advice from them, and without commenting on what those projects did, I'll just repeat what I said earlier. The only promise we've ever made to people with our NFTs is fun, right, and entertainment. And I think if you look at those projects, you can go read about them, they did some things that we've been very careful to avoid. And so, yeah, to me, it doesn't really have a major effect on what we're doing. I don't know if...
I am not a lawyer as well. I would like to.
And you don't play one on TV.
No, exactly. I mean, the good news is, I would say in the last 3 months, with the appointment of Mark Boyrin, who is our former chief legal officer, is now Polygon CEO, and in terms of like our legal team in general, like we're very closely aligned in terms of the different regulatory guidances and just really influencing and being in the room with some of the key influencers and decision makers. Ryan White, before he departed from Polygon, was at the White House testifying in DC about, you know, the power of ZK technology and what does it mean for Polygon and how important it is to have some guidance. So our team is pretty proactive, not only in the US, but across every single region in Europe and APAC, and we have internal open all hands where we have engineers and BD and marketing folks asking pretty open questions to our leadership team. And so I would just say we're pretty proactive in terms of talking to the right folks. It's like a huge priority for our team to make sure that we're providing the right guidance and making sure that the developers that we're supporting are involved in some of those areas, and we can get their feedback as well, and we're able to articulate that feedback and kind of the successful use cases that we're seeing not only in gaming but in other industry verticals, and sharing those use cases and getting like the legislators in the room on a laptop with a MetaMask wallet and familiarizing them with the technology. That's been something that our team continues to prioritize and we'll see moving forward. So.